If anyone missed the video on the first 2 seasons, there's a suggestion for you in the top right corner. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's dive into the 3rd season. It all begins with 5 unrelated criminals who are sentenced to death, deciding to escape to the east as one. The first of these is Dorian, who pretended to be dead during his execution, then killed all the guards and escaped, leaving a message on the wall stating he is going to Tokyo to discover what defeat means. Next season. The next criminal is named Hector. During his execution on the electric chair, he pretended to be dead, then killed all the guards and left a message similar to Dorian's before escaping to Tokyo. A lawyer who came to visit an inmate named Speck was killed by him. Speck pulled a gold tooth from his mouth and used it to escape from a submarine that was at a depth of 200 meters. The next criminal, named Sikorsky, was confined in a place 100 meters deep, where rockets were once launched, leaving rust on the smooth walls. Using this rust, Sikorsky managed to escape and, wishing to understand the meaning of defeat, also headed to Tokyo. The last prisoner is named Yanagi, and he was held in a room made of glass capable of withstanding a missile strike. However, Yanagi has the ability to create a vacuum with his hands, allowing him to break the glass and escape to the east. Baki learns of this news from Tokugawa, and Yujiro hears about it from the television. The school bullies who really want to get to Baki decide to do it with the help of mercenaries whom they ask to handle the situation for them. But when they encounter Baki, they immediately start to feel fear, and not without reason, as Baki effortlessly deals with them, and when the bullies decide it's time to use weapons, Speck appears behind them, eager to meet Baki. He takes the student's gun and shoots himself in the cheeks a couple of times for fun. Then he starts beating up Baki, which prompts the police to arrive. Speck says that very soon they must fight for real, and he hopes Baki won't disappoint him. After that, Speck surrenders to the police to stay with them. Meanwhile, Dorian decides to visit the karate school in search of Doppo. However, instead, Katsumi continues his demonstration to the students alongside Kyo. To lure Doppo out, Dorian beats up his adopted son. Caillou wants to confront him for this, but Dorian is not ready to fight him yet. Instead, he escapes by starting an improvised fire. Tokugawa met with Igor to see his student, who very much wanted to participate in Tokugawa's next tournament, and had even mentioned being ready to fight anytime. Even right now, their conversation was overheard by Sikorsky, who then decided to attack and beat up the young fighter. Igor stepped in to defend him, but the difference in strength was too great, and Sikorsky beat him as well. Seeing this, Tokugawa immediately took Sikorsky to the underground arena, where the other criminals gathered right after them. Tokugawa asked why they had come here. Sikorsky was brought by Tokugawa. Dorian, Speck was drawn by the smell of blood that permeates this arena. Yanagi is Japanese, and all Japanese people know about this place. As for Hector, he's here just to meet strong fighters. Tokugawa promised them that he would introduce them to defeat, and right after these words, Baki joined them, along with Doppa, Goki, Kaio, and Hanayama. They introduced themselves and agreed on the rules, which allowed any of them to challenge anyone to a duel at any time from that moment onward. Doppo is the first to decide to attack his opponent. He chose Dorian, who fought dirty and used very strong wire to sever his hand. Using tension in his muscles, Doppo stops the bleeding and avoids death. It seemed like he couldn't fight anymore, but according to him, it's even easier this way. After that, Doppo lands a strong hit on Dorian and then disappears. After winning the tournament, Baki began dating Kozue and even took her on a date where they kissed. Just at that moment, Speck wanted to fight with him, but to avoid disturbing the couple, Hanayama intervenes. Of course, a fight wouldn't be a fight if you didn't take off all your clothes before it starts. Speck unexpectedly hit Hanayama and then wrapped him around the table. Using a bench, he attempted to finish him off, but the mafia boss proved to be tougher. So Speck used his special technique, a barrage of punches, while holding his breath for 5 minutes. However, at a certain point, Hanayama counterattacks and starts hitting Speck in return. When it seemed the fight was over, Speck resorts to extreme measures. He puts bullets in Hanayama's mouth, which explode there, causing a firework effect. His cheeks explode from this, but despite these injuries, Hanayama still delivers the finishing blow and hands his opponent over to the police. However, as he's about to leave, Speck recovers and attacks Hanayama again, this time using a weapon to shoot him in the knees. In the end, he starts to strangle him, but Hanayama, known for his incredible strength, breaks his joints first on the arm and then on the thigh, and starts to choke his opponent, putting an end to the fight. Speck is taken to the hospital, where he rapidly ages, revealing that he is actually 97 years old. Baki is a high school student and keeps his activities a secret from everyone, so when Hector attacks him, he simply escapes through a window to avoid putting other students at risk. However, Yanagi, who pretends to be a gardener, manages to reach him. He started attacking him with sickles attached to a rope. However, Goki assaults him by throwing a kettle of cold water, then slams him into the ground. But Yanagi counterattacks Goki using a weapon, forcing them to team up with Baki and fight together. Everything went well at first until Yanagi decided to use his so-called deadly hand. He believes that oxygen is the most toxic gas in the world, because if a person inhales only 6% oxygen, they will instantly lose consciousness, and since Yanagi can create a vacuum with his hand, he can mimic this state, and this is how he causes Baki to lose consciousness. It was only the police who arrived at the school due to someone's call that forced Yanagi to flee, which means Baki was defeated. Akugawa learns about this at an impromptu meeting, as he had more faith in Baki's abilities than anyone, which made him start crying, but they were interrupted by Dorian, who first defeated all the gods and then intended to set everyone on fire using gasoline. However, at that moment, Katsumi attacks him, eager to take revenge on his antagonists. First, he pours gasoline on him, and then ignites Dorian with his own lighter. Doppo appreciated Katsumi's action, but advised him to use only his body during a fight, because if you harm yourself, you sacrifice your dignity. After these words, Dorian comes to and gets ready to fight Doppo, but he's interrupted by Keto, who had become Katsumi's mentor. First, he forces Dorian to the ground, and then even cuts off his ear, though he does this using wire, which Doppo does not approve of. While they are talking, Dorian manages to tie up Keto and Katsumi with wire, which is considered stronger than metal, but Doppo slices through it with a single strike. Realizing he has no chance of winning, Dorian pulls a grenade from his mouth and blows everything up, allowing him to escape. However, Keito, who is determined to finish the fight with Dorian, has been following him all this time to his hideout. Before that, Dorian covered his fists with shards from broken bottles, and though Keito beat him so severely that he begged for mercy, it turned out to be only a hypnosis that Dorian had put him under. After that, Dorian beat him to such an extent that it was a miracle he survived. His body, used like a punching bag, is found by Retsu, and Kato is immediately taken to the hospital with numerous severe fractures. Katsumi decides not to let this matter go, so he asks all the students from his school to find and bring Dorian to them. Even though he was disguised, Orochi's people were everywhere, and they captured him and brought him to an amusement park where he was awaited. The first to confront him was a regular clown who took Dorian on some rides, and it was there that Sueda attacked him. He and Kato studied together and went through a lot, and as he said, he was even ready to die for him. Hearing this, Dorian decides to test him, for which he takes him to a roller coaster where they are supposed to fight. The challenge was that the fighting spot was very unstable, which initially made it difficult for Sueda to fight properly. However, it turns out that Toppa once taught him a stance used by sailors to fight on a swaying ship at sea. Thanks to this stance, Sueda was able to counterattack effectively. Because of this, Dorian decides to jump off the roller coaster with him, putting their lives in danger. But just before falling, Dorian caught himself on a lamppost with his line, cushioning his fall. However, Sueda survived the fall with great difficulty. Seeing this, Katsumi approaches him, followed by Doppa and Retsu. It turns out that Dorian and Retsu studied martial arts at the same school, and according to their rules, they are not allowed to fight each other. Therefore, Doppo decides to face Dorian, and before the fight, he strips down to his underwear, because it's much more comfortable to fight that way. It also turns out that after he lost his hand, Doppo went to a familiar doctor at the clinic, who performed surgery and reattached his hand. They started fighting, but Doppo turned out to be much stronger, forcing Dorian to put him into a terrible, poorly animated hypnosis. However, even under hypnosis, Doppo could fight as usual. The thing is, it was very important for him to finish the fight, so even battling an illusion, he envisioned the same blows that Dorian actually attempted to deliver, allowing him to defeat Dorian and make him feel fear. The final blow remained to be struck, and it was Kato, even in a wheelchair, who had to deliver it. Despite his critical condition, Kato stood up and with his strike concluded the fight. Following that, both he and Dorian ended up in the hospital. There, it was discovered that Dorian had a small explosive in his wrist, capable of causing quite a significant explosion upon impact. While Kato was in a coma, Dorian comes to visit him, but decides not to kill him and instead goes to Doppo. When Doppo arrives home to surprise his wife with his fully intact hand, he finds signs of a fight, and at that moment, a blow from Dorian's wrist lands on his face, causing an explosion that severely injures Doppo's head. On the street, Dorian is met by Retsu, who knocks him out with a strike. Escorted by Retsu and a large security detail, Dorian is taken to the hospital, but now they do not even need a cage to guard him. This is because, after realizing that he had never truly won, Dorian's brain decided to erase his personality, and now he resembles a little boy who just wants candy. Sikorsky sneaks into Kozue's room and promises not to harm her mother if she doesn't scream. Kozue believed his words, but she had even more faith in Baki, whom she began calling for help. Baki appeared in that very second and started punishing Sikorsky for crossing his boundaries. He throws him outside to fight there, but while trying to reach him, Sikorsky manages to escape, taking Kozue with him. The government of Japan convenes a meeting to address the capture of the escaped criminals. Out of the 5 escapees, only 2 have been apprehended. They decided to involve the most famous criminal in the world, who is held in America, to assist with this matter. A Japanese representative flew to meet him, but it turns out that in prison, his conditions are much better than most have outside. The criminal's name is Oliver. The thing is, he is so strong that the government decided to use him as a bounty hunter. He has caught most of the prisoners who are in his prison. During the conversation, Oliver receives a call summoning him to a new assignment. Upon arriving, it becomes clear that a former police officer from New York has barricaded himself on the upper floors with more than 20 hostages and has shown no mercy to those who tried to escape home. Once, he made secret deals with a gang, but at one point, Oliver came to him and ruined everything, beating him so badly that now his arms and legs are not real. Understandably, he wanted revenge on his offender, and for that, he intercepted the dragon. As per tradition, before they fight, Oliver strips down and takes shotgun blasts at close range, but he doesn't even notice them. When the criminal decides to use his katana, it also fails to pierce Oliver's body. Oliver finds the fight boring, so he hurls the criminal out of the building with a single punch. The officer can't withstand such a blow, and dies before even hitting the ground. After completing this assignment, Oliver decides to go to Tokyo to catch the remaining prisoners because, in his words, no criminal should be freer than he is. Upon arrival, he jumps out of the car at full speed to meet Yujiro, who at that moment is having a conversation with Sikorsky about Baki. It turns out that it was Yujiro who instructed him to kidnap Kozue to give Baki extra motivation to fight him. At this moment, Baki bursts in and promptly throws Sikorsky off the top floors of the building. He then starts attacking Oliver, blaming them for everything that happened. But suddenly, Sikorsky climbs back up using the same technique he used to escape from his prison. This time, he used shards from broken glass, which allowed him to deliver a powerful blow to Baki. But the fight was interrupted by the police, forcing Sikorsky to escape by jumping out the window. Naturally, Baki wanted to conclude their duel with a decisive round, so he tracked him to his lair to fight there, and before their battle, the best dialogue in anime history took place. Who gave you permission to wear underwear? Hey, what? You want me to be without underwear? Exactly. Don't worry about your dangling parts. I expected something like that from you, kid. Wearing his trunks gave Baki a slight advantage, allowing him to defeat him. Oliver, who was tasked with capturing this criminal, watched the fight. When Sikorsky heard his words, he immediately got up to fight him, but Oliver, with a single blow, throws him out of the tall building and the police apprehend him below. While Oliver was looking for information on the escapees at the police station, it turned out that Hector found him first and took him by surprise while changing the secretary's disguise. They fought according to fighters' etiquette. That's why Hector put on leopard print briefs, stabbed him with a knife, and started to beat him. However, Oliver proved to be much stronger, so Hector had to escape through the ventilation system. Kosyo, having become stronger, began training his techniques on Katsumi's students. He said that he had further improved his technique, and therefore even Retsu would not be a problem for him. That's why he wants to test his strength against one of the convicts, specifically Hector. With the help of Katsumi's students, they tracked him down. At this time, Hector was in a room with Stride. He does not possess outstanding fighting skills, so instead, he uses blades that he surgically embedded into his joints. Kosyo enters and immediately starts hitting Hector in one spot, repeatedly knocking him to the ground. When he thought he had already won, Hector uses a mechanism in his hand to knock out Kosyo's jaw. Kosyo was about to continue the fight, but this time Hector didn't hold back and used explosives, which resulted in Kosyo being taken to the hospital, where he was followed by Kureha. Incidentally, Kureha had recently performed surgery on Jack to increase his body size, allowing him to grow by 20 centimeters, making him even stronger. At that time, Baki was about to make love with Kozue, but Yujiro came to watch. He told his son to love his woman regardless of what others say, and advised Kozue to always strive to be desirable for Baki. In short, he gave his blessing to their union, then left the couple alone, and Baki said he would definitely take Kozue during their next meeting. Retsu accidentally encounters Vector in the elevator of a store. They are supposed to fight, but the place is not suitable, so they first head to a bar. Retsu finds out that Vector used explosives to defeat Kosyo, so he decides not to hold back and uses a kunai. First, he blinds Vector in his left eye, and then uses the kunai to assault his entire body. Vector tries to escape Nekasian, thus takes to Mashofte, but Retsu caught up with him and continued to fight outside, this time using a sword. Even though Vector splashed blood into Retsu's eye, he was unable to dodge. At the end, he pulled out a staff, and even explosives couldn't stop him from delivering powerful blows, but suddenly Jack appears and knocks out Raitsu with a tranquilizer. He tells Hector to go home and heal up because he wants to fight him later himself. Hector won't be able to. Hector was about to leave, but he noticed two thugs robbing Retsu. He decided to stand up for him and chased them away. When he was about to leave again, a dog attacked Retsu's body. Not wanting to leave the unconscious Retsu in danger, Hector watched over him all night, bleeding all the while, putting his own life at risk. Upon regaining consciousness, consciousness, Retsu immediately grabbed his rescuer and quickly carried him to the operating room, which was located on the first floor of the karate school. He was in a coma for 2 days and needed an urgent blood transfusion, which was provided by the karate school students who didn't want to stand aside. When he regained consciousness, Retsu prepared and brought him healing food, but Hector couldn't stay there, so he headed to Katsumi, who was teaching karate at the time. Hector thanked them for probably saving his life and then apologized, as despite everything, they are still enemies, and therefore, Hector intends to bury them all. He said he planned to fight Katsumi by the rules of karate, but instead, he put on a flame-resistant suit and used flour to start a fire. As Hector was about to leave quietly, he was met outside by Doppo, who had already recovered from the explosion caused by Dorian. Doppo takes him to the arena where they start fighting, but the difference in strength is too great, and in this battle of the one-eyed, Doppo emerges victorious. Hector comes to in the main office of the karate school, where they recently put out a fire. He is met by Katsumi, who tells him that he will keep knocking him out until Hector gets on his knees and admits his defeat, but Hector had no intention of giving up, even as he repeatedly loses consciousness. Eventually, Katsumi hits him so hard that a doctor has to intervene, and when Hector wakes up again, one of the students tells him that Katsumi has decided not to continue the fight, so he simply conceded. In the morning, Katsumi finds Hector at his door, who finally admitted his defeat. Meanwhile, Baki and Kozue finished what they had started, and as they were about to do it again, they were interrupted by Yanagi, who really wanted to fight him. "I will fight too." Fortunately for Baki, her help was not needed, because having experienced a woman, he became much stronger, and Yanagi couldn't land even a single strike on him. Due to this, Yanagi decided to change his fighting style to one where he strikes with his hands like a whip. This can be achieved by completely relaxing one's hands and imagining the whole body as a liquid. In this way, he was able to wound Baki on the shoulder, leg, and arm. However, it turns out that Yujiro once taught him this technique, saying that such a fighting style is more suited to women and children. Baki delivered sharp blows to Yanagi, and eventually caught him in a painful hold, but at that moment, Sikosuke joined them, having escaped from prison to get revenge on Baki. However, even together, they couldn't do anything against him, and even Hanayama, who came to watch the fight, acknowledged that Kozue had made Baki much stronger. Baki could have finished them off, but instead, he rammed Chakusekono. He grabbed Kozue and escaped from there. Hanayama could have dealt with them in Baki's place, but he chose not to fight and simply went home instead. Katsumi wanted to help Hector escape to the Middle East. Using connections, he secretly got him aboard a ship. To ensure Hector wouldn't forget him, Tatsumi taught him karate techniques and also gave him a black belt as a symbol of friendship. But on the ship, he is met by Yanagi, who decides to kill him for losing his honor and befriending his enemy. For this, he did a safe pause. Thus, he delivers a blow that takes away his only seeing eye. Being blind, Hector couldn't fight, and to avoid his death, he jumps surface. It's all frosty. He jumps off the ship. Then Jack finds Sikosuke and challenges him to a fight. They will do it in a phone booth because according to Sikosuke, Jack's size would not reach him there. Using Sasonte suggests como Diana. Initially, that seemed to be the case, but Jack's strength was too great, and ultimately, Jack emerged victorious from the phone booth. The unconscious Sikosuke was then taken to the underground arena, where they continued their fights. Jack threw him against the wall, and realizing he had no chance of winning, Sikorsky decided to use a weapon, but Jack's body proved to be tougher, so Sikorsky threw a nail at him, but Jack caught it with his teeth. Demonstrating his superiority, Jack switched out, and in his place stepped Gaia, who is known for his ability to use everything around him in a fight. In his hands, water or sand can become a weapon, and considering the sand on the underground arena contains fighters' teeth and nails, this weapon becomes even more dangerous. First, like from a shotgun, Guy blasts him with sand, and then decides to use the sand as camouflage. He raised a cloud of dust, making it impossible for Sikorsky to see, and in those moments, Gaia landed his blows. In the end, Gaia decided to drive Sikorsky into a state of incredible fear. To do this, he deprived Sikorsky of his sight and delivered powerful blows every 10 seconds. From the anticipation between strikes, Sikorsky began to feel fear, and eventually, he admitted his defeat, pleading for mercy. In the next episode, Goki wanted to settle the score with Yanagi and challenged him to a fight. However, as he approached the battleground, he saw the gates, the very same ones that appeared before his fight with Jack, which incidentally, he lost. The thing is, Yanagi's right hand is completely infused with poison, a result he achieved through painful training with poisonous sand, which makes his right hand extremely dangerous for anyone. However, before Yanagi could strike, Matobe, a jujitsu master adept in all kinds of weaponry, reached him first. They began to fight, and Matobe first stabbed his leg with a sword, then inflicted a severe wound on his face, and eventually even cut off his famous hand with his own weapon. Matobe asked Yanagi if he admitted his defeat, but suddenly Yujiro interferes, breaking Matobe's sword with one hand, then leans towards Yanagi and tells him he has lost. However, Yanagi disagreed, saying they would decide themselves who would emerge as the winner and who as the loser from this fight. At that moment, Koki arrives and realizes that the gates were not due to Yanagi, but due to Yujiro. Since Yanagi did not want to admit his defeat, Yujiro decides the outcome of the fight and simply knocks him out. Then, somewhere in the mountains, Oliver finds Hector. He looks at his eye and says he's blind because of the poison that Yanagi transferred to him with his hand. This was confirmed in a lab, where they said that this poison might be the most dangerous of all. Unfortunately, during the fight with Yanagi, Baki caught this virus, causing him to lose a lot of weight. He was taken to a hospital where Kureha stated that there is no cure for this affliction yet, and Baki is likely to die soon. In the hospital, they couldn't save him, so Baki escapes from there and heads to Ando with Kozue, because he believes that if the poison was created in natural conditions, only Ando, living in the forest, could help him. Anda prepared medicine for him and did everything possible for his rapid recovery, but told Kozue that they arrived too late and that saving Baki was unlikely. Retsu came to try to help him, and as a greeting, knocks Baki out. At that very moment, a helicopter arrives, from which Chinese people emerge. They load Baki's body into the helicopter and head to China with him. And while they're flying there, I'll tell you about Muhammad Ali. Before the exhibition match that was supposed to take place against Igor, Muhammad went for a run with his teammates, but one by one, they started disappearing, and when only Muhammad was left from the whole team, Yura appeared before him. Muhammad, whose fighting style never relied on defense, stands in a defensive stance for the first time in his life because his hands moved on their own. He started attacking Yujiro but couldn't land a single hit. Then the giant said that Muhammad is not a boxer at all. During his fights, he acts differently. His fighting style resembles martial arts more, and he wants Muhammad to demonstrate it. Muhammad attacks Yujiro again, and this time quite successfully, but he couldn't fully unleash his potential. The thing is, Muhammad hid from the military for 3.5 years, and during that time, his legs started moving differently. Because of this, he couldn't perfect his martial arts. Still, Yujiro did not intend to fight him. Even though Muhammad is much weaker than him, Yujiro respects him greatly. Back in those times, being a black man, Muhammad fought for the rights of minorities. He went against an entire nation to defend others' rights, and for that, Yujiro respects him immensely. Muhammad asked him about his goal, to which he replied that he wants to become stronger than the army of any great power. After these words, Muhammad asked him to meet his son, Ali Jr. He hopes that one day, his son will fulfill his dream and perfect the martial art of Muhammad Ali. Baki has already arrived in China, and when he wakes up, it turns out that Retsu has arranged for his participation in the Raite tournament. According to Retsu, winning it will help Baki heal his body. In China, there are several people who hold the title of Kaiyu, and once a century, a grand tournament is held to determine the strongest. However, participation in it must be earned, and for this, Baki will have to fight one of the strongest students of the Kung Fu school. Even in such a terrible condition, Baki demonstrated his skill. When the fighter attacked him, he dodged the strikes, lifted, and then lowered his opponent. No matter how fiercely the fighter tried to defeat Baki, he simply lifted and then gently lowered him. In the end, without receiving a single hit, his opponent admitted defeat. This means Baki earned the right to participate in the Raite tournament. Aside from Baki, his father and Muhammad's son, Ali Jr., who, like Baki, earned the right to participate through combat, will also be present in this tournament. Will Baki be able to win the Raite tournament, and will he manage to cure himself of this poison? We'll find out in the 4th season, with a video on it coming out possibly tomorrow. Don't forget to write in the comments what you think about this anime, and we'll see you in the next video.